Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. I am now making the follow-on video. In my previous video I addressed all the victims and I explained how we are moving to court cases. A lot of questions have arisen out of there. People have said things like, oh, the court system is not going to help you. They are on it. And it's true, a lot of the, I can't say if it's a lot, but certainly some members of the judiciary have been captured, that much is true. And I have myself seen some irregularities trying to go to the court. So I do accept that. However, I have been representing myself in front of 3 judges, and I can assure you that on 2 judges' faces, when I told them about the situation, I couldn't see anything but shock. There was no conniving, there was just genuine shock. And you have to keep in mind that also judges are very aware that these weapons are going to be used against them, just because they are such high-value targets. So it is actually in society's interest to have this entire matter cleared up. In a sense, the victims are the canaries in the gold mine. I know it's a very trite, often used expression, but it's true, because what is being guinea-pigged on them, rather publicly now, is what's going to be actually put into practice and shipped to everybody, and to be used especially on high-value targets. These are judges, because you have to keep in mind that they also appear in commercial courts, and in commercial litigation the stakes are extremely high. Judges will be a target of this. Also journalists, newspaper editors will also be targets, chiefs of police. I believe that intelligence agents already are targets quite publicly, and I think there's reason to believe that they are all chipped and implanted and whatnot. So they are, in a sense, the biggest guinea pigs of them all. But in a sense, we have reached now a stage where this system is utterly out of control. And I keep pleading and I keep reaching out to all of these people. This is certainly judges, because they're very highly trained people, and they are very, they are very studious. They're not essentially how to put it politely, the flashy car driving, sort of high risk taking type that maybe some MI5 and MI6 senior leaders might be. So actually reaching out to judges is actually a very, very good thing to do. I think when they understand that yes, this is for real, and one is giving them a bit of assistance about the details, then for sure they will understand the gravity of the situation. I think it is at this stage extremely important to reach out to absolutely everybody. I also would like to mention the police. The police will be targets of these weapons directly from organized crime, and also for more subtle blackmailing from maybe their own side. That happens all the time. They also do get into employment disputes and things like that, where the stakes again can be rather abrasive, and that's all going to happen. And the most important thing to realize is that the ultimate target, really high value targets, are essentially high net worth individuals, and the higher the net worth, the better the target. So what we're dealing with is essentially an asymmetric warfare system that is in everybody's interest to bring under control. And this entire architecture, actually, when you go on to the remote neural monitoring and the remote brain control, that is an even bigger asymmetry here, because yes, it can be done through satellites. However, if somebody reads out someone's brain print, that in principle can be shipped to anything, and can be also influenced, I think, from systems that are the size of a suitcase. And again, we get to the situation whereby literally everybody becomes a target. And in a situation like that, you have the potential to seriously destabilize any society, but also more seriously destabilize the top of the leadership. Because here, remember, these, if you have a very, very high pyramid, at the very top, the higher the pyramid, the more pure the concentration of psychopaths at the top. So even the leadership has to understand that it is in their interest if we are cycling the system below them. Remember my talks about the system cycling, right? I am not about bringing down the cartel holders or any such thing. It's about stabilizing the system. That is what I'm working on. And essentially targeting the best and brightest works as a conquering method. But by the time you have a global empire, you are conquering yourself. You're essentially sawing away, the branch on which you sit. So this is to explain what we're doing here. And so it is certainly the case that we can go to court cases. We have to inform judges. We have to recapture the court system, and we have to cycle towards the rule of law, because only the rule of law is actually giving everybody stability. Otherwise, things get rather hard, and businessmen know that it is extremely hard to do business in a non-linear environment, because essentially your investments are continually under threat. The situation can change very, very rapidly, so it is very hard to invest and make plans for the future. So non-linear situations work for conquering, but the whole conquering model is now reaching its end, because essentially it's now saturated on the size of the globe. So this is why we're now cycling onto a new system, and this is why it's also in everybody's best interest to cycle to an actual a highly resilient system, and one that actually gives stability. And the only way to do that is to actually put the people above others who actually have the leadership, the sort of how to put it, the inspiration and the altruistic features that actually allow a good steering of the system. And this is what we're really dealing with. So I'm going to continue, and for that we have to cycle the system, but we have to also remove corrupt elements, and that will come with a lot of resistance. So we need also a lot of people to help us push that through. Now the question arises, and now we're really going towards the how to tackle this part of the program. And I have already, the previous video was essentially how to get the victims into a better shape, how to really use the information that they provide, to help them, for us to actually find out what has happened to them, but also to help them put them back into the position in society where they belong. Now this video will be entirely about how to really fight the deep capture in the system. And this is now for everybody. It's not just for victims, it is for everybody who has an interest and a stake in cycling the system. And the first thing to do is to realize that when you're dealing with a malfunctioning system, so sorry, this is still the old drawing, so the way we will do it, just to reiterate, is we have these big pyramid organizations. This could be, the secret services, it could be government, it could be whatever system you're looking at, because they're all pyramids, and they're also pyramids in themselves. So in that sense, they are fractal. At whatever scale you look at it. If you zoom in, you still get a pyramid here as part of a team or a department. When you zoom out, you still get a pyramid, overall. So this is what it means, that if a system is fractal, it means it's the same structure, the same sort of pattern, the same symmetry at every scale. So we are dealing with these, and what we're going to counter it with is essentially the highest efficiency systems we have, and actually the most performance systems we have, and that's essentially completely decentralized systems. So we have essentially decoupled systems here, small autonomous groups that work to their own interest, in a sense, and to their own best expertise. And they might work with others, or they might work completely autonomously. And with small teams, I really mean 2 to 12 people. That's the best. I think for these purposes, 12 is maybe even too many. But if you break them down into groups of 3, groups of 4, and things like that, it can work fantastically. And essentially what we're going to do is that we are all going to start marching in exactly the same direction. And if they try to stop one group, the other one keeps moving. So essentially, what this big behemoth system will be faced with is not just 2 of these, but literally just armies of these, all moving in the same direction. And I propose the direction we're moving in is essentially back to the rule of law. We want to cycle the system back to the rule of law. This means court cases. This means removing absolutely every single person who is corrupt, who blocks this endeavor, who's trying to pervert the course of justice, who's assaulting or threatening people, who's somehow involved with the organization of illegal targeting. And all of these people have to be ejected from the system. And for that we have to find out who they are. And this is essentially what it is. Now, the system itself is extremely psychopathic, the rotten parts of the system. So people are threatened, it's entirely violence-based, dominance-based, and it has a huge disadvantage through that, because when you make a system just entirely based on threats, people will do exactly as you tell them, but no more. They will not bring their own enthusiasm in it. In fact, they will just go back into their shell, and they will be like little metal spheres. You know, they will give you the smallest surface they can, because they are scared of attack. So they will be essentially exhibiting one form or another of learned helplessness, and that's the weakness of the system. Instead, when you have something like this, so little groups that are entirely driven by their own motivation to actually repair their own situation, what you have is essentially self-driven elements and also self-repairing elements. And this is why I say everybody who takes part in this has to help others. Essentially, we have to, whatever we see, we have to repair. You know, mend, repair, heal, mend, repair, heal, and then we move forward. And we try to get as many people on board as possible to have an amplification effect. And the way to do that is to literally reach out, whatever problem people have, you reach out, you help them, and you really help them with their problem. And then you also tell them what your problem is. They don't have to help, but they will be aware. And then, you know, they say, well, you know, I'm looking for help. If you know somebody who could help me, please, you know, put them in touch with me. And then you have an amplification effect. And this is what we're going to do. So this is how we're moving now. Okay, so this is why, I also think personally, my interest is essentially to help all the victims of the MKUltra, because it fits into this entire thing. They were horrifically abused and were made to do horrific things. And it's exactly, you know, being victims ourselves, we know what horrific things they are capable of. So we are going to interlink with those people and also, you know, start marching back towards the perpetrators and try to get them to court, essentially. So I'm interlinking with those. Also, I've got personal grievances, you know, and personal general anger about, for example, the withdrawal of disability benefit. And I've heard about the many people, disabled people, who were essentially, well, driven to despair. Some people, you know, killed themselves out of despair. And I personally think that move was essentially a Nazi thing to do. And I do not forgive that at all. So I think that's a really, really bad move. Anybody who goes for the most vulnerable in society really goes up against me. I will not stand for that. So I personally will try to reach out to absolutely everybody who has been disadvantaged, disabled people, those people who have been targeted, those people who are suffering from MKUltra and all that targeting. And by the way, this includes also agents themselves. Those agents who really want to pivot out of that system, they're more than welcome. And I think I begin to understand what they have been put through. So I do understand. What I will not deal with is essentially any sort of subversion, any sort of, you know, operative or informant shenanigans. I mean, the informants, well, they can follow me on Twitter and YouTube if they like. So there's not a fat lot to gain from, you know, behind the scenes, because I make everything public. But this is how we're going to cycle. So I will continue to try to reach out to the police, to the courts, to agents, but especially the victims, MKUltra victims, all the other experimental victims as well, and the disabled people who already essentially have been essentially through the same thing as us, utter helplessness. I also will try to reach out to everybody who lost their job. That was essentially what I started with before I became targeted. I wanted to essentially help people get back into work, trying to use modern technology and essentially a new approach to the labour market. I will continue that project, and I will keep talking about that. But this is basically the direction. So in a sense, what we have now is there's still some work to be done to create awareness, but I think there's already a critical mass. So awareness will come with us starting to move forward. We are now in the phase where we are all moving forward. So the victims, please look at the last video, how to prepare court cases. We need you to do that to move forward. You have to have essentially your things autonomously by yourself. Maybe get together with people who you trust, work out how to write up your victim case, start approaching lawyers and so on. And then, you know, interface with others. There will be other groups who are not actually victims themselves, and they are essentially fighting corruption. So we are all going to work autonomously with the same goal of tidying up corruption, bringing crimes to justice, and getting compensation for the victims. That's the goal. So, okay. How we're going to do that in detail, I would like to talk about, and I would like to use what I personally call system judo. I mean, there are different aspects to system judo, as you can imagine, but the principle of it, the fundamental principle of it, is pretty much just like in judo, where you are using the inertia or even the weight and the force of your opponent to essentially disable him. You're using his own force, overbearing force, against him. And this is very good when you're dealing with asymmetric situations whereby you are vastly outnumbered by the other side. They are just like in asymmetric warfare. You know, many different things are asymmetric warfare. For example, biological and chemical agents. You know, you can just with one germ just devastate an entire town. That's pretty asymmetric. Hacking can be asymmetric. But when you are cycling systems, there's also asymmetric methods whereby doing small things that in themselves look like not very much, in the end will put a certain spin into the system that in the end will give it, you know, the system itself will start spinning in a slightly different direction. Its own inertia will make it topple over under its own weight. So that is what system judo is. So there are different aspects of system judo which I will teach you one by one, but one of the aspects which we can use right now here is essentially use the most devastating aspect of the system against itself. Now, the most devastating aspect of all the different methods, be that stalking, be that the actual electromagnetic attacks, be that the mutilation, the financial devastation, what they're doing essentially is taking the victims and assaulting them from absolutely all angles. So you probably know these, you know, when you've got tennis courts and you've got these ball machines that just shoot out balls, you know, and you're meant to stand on the other side of the net and hit them back. Now, being a victim is essentially like having, you know, 50 of these tennis ball machines, and every tennis ball is an attack, and all these machines are pointing at you. You know, if you're one tennis player and you just have to hit back one ball, you can deal with that. But when you've got 50 balls and whilst you're hitting one back, another one hits you on the back of the head, you know, then you turn around, another one hits you in the face, and so on, then you're meant to be entirely broken down. That's what the system is entirely based upon. And we will take that key aspect of this takedown program, of this murder and mutilation program, and we will turn it around. We will turn exactly the most lethal aspect around, and we will point it back at them. Now, the way to do that is to actually use every single thing that the system throws at you. Instead of a private attack, a personal attack, you will take it as an opportunity to do measurements and to collect evidence and throw that back at people. So, and with people, I mean the heads of the intelligence agencies. And, you know, and so what you're going to do is everything that happens to you, you just have to stay calm. I mean, you know, essentially being hit from all sides with things that are a lot more harmful than tennis balls. You know, that's very, very hard to do. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to take everything that the system throws at us, and we are going to throw it back. And we're going to throw it back at very few people. We're going to use exactly the same methods that they are using. But instead of, you know, having literally military assault systems aimed at one person, what we're going to do is we're going to take all our evidence, and we're going to take all our individual victim reports, and we're going to aim it back, and we're going to aim it straight at the head of the intelligence agencies. So if you're in a country, you will aim, you know, your attacks back at one person, which will be the head of the intelligence agency in the country that you're residing in. Okay? That person, typically a man, is in charge of fighting terrorism. And with whatever happens to you, you know, what you can do is write to these institutions if you know their name. I mean, they're targeting you anyway, so, writing to them is not going to suddenly reveal your existence to them because they are targeting you. But essentially, this is what will start happening. So you write to them, and you also copy in that government department which is in charge of supervising them. And ideally, the second part will be something that has a freedom of information mechanism on it. And then the third thing that you can do, ideally, if you're comfortable, is also publish everything. So this is now the counterattack for victims. So the previous one was the court cases, now this is the actual attack. So again, to repeat, the key aspect of this takedown and kill program that is being run by the intelligence agencies is to essentially assault people into the ground. And also the sheer outlandishness and the sheer number of attacks that they expose victims to is essentially intended to generate such an outlandishly large claim in front of a court that the court will throw it out based on just how large the case is. And this is the entire point. But now we're going to turn it around and we're going to point it at them. And this is also why we're going to combine with other people. So first of all, everything that happens to you, I would recommend doing the following, and try to be as, I know it's hard, but just try to be as calm as possible. Because in a sense, every single one of us doesn't have to be that lethal. We don't have to lose our temper. We don't have to be threatening or anything. We'll just calmly report what happens to us. So for every victim, what I would recommend is that they make a video, and don't think, oh, no one's going to watch the videos. No, people will, and we'll put them all together once they're all up. People do make backup copies, and we'll put it all together. So what you can do is essentially, if something happens to you, you can have, for example, a daily report, or weekly report, whatever you're comfortable with, either for yourself or for everybody else. What you can do is literally just calmly summarize at the end of a week what has happened to you. Keep a diary, write it down, and at the end of the week just summarize. Have you been shot at electromagnetically? Have they broken into your flat? Has something been stolen? And so on and so on. And you just list calmly everything that has happened to you, right? It doesn't matter if you do not understand how they did it. We'll figure that out together as mankind, as we're slowly building this puzzle. But you essentially list what has happened to you, and at the end of it, you ask personally, naming by name, the head of the intelligence agency to stop the attacks against you. It doesn't matter if they get some shills to laugh at you and to say, haha, do you really believe the intelligence agencies would target you particularly? Well, it's not you particularly, but you're on a program that they are certainly running. And we're finding out more and more about it. But you are a victim, and only they have the power to actually stop it. So the entire idea is, from their point of view, that they will ship all the assaults to many, many different people who will then assault you, right? They will assault you by many, many different ways. And the idea is that you're so ground down, first of all, by the attacks, and then so overwhelmed with the investigation, and you will hit so many brick walls trying to find out where the emitters are, which of your neighbors are involved. You can't just go into a neighbor's home and prove it. So the idea is that by the time it's at the downstream end, it is so overwhelming that you can't cope. But this is not how it is, because we are now putting all these puzzle pieces together. We've got all these people saying the same thing. And it's clear that the people in charge of this, either of the program directly or fighting terrorism, right? Either they are doing it themselves, or they're in charge of preventing things like that from ever happening. So either way, they're guilty, right? You have to understand, either way, they're guilty. And then what you do at the end of the video, this is why you address the head of intelligence, if you know his name. Here in Switzerland, I don't even know who it is, but then you address the organization. Then you just say the head of, say, the Nachrichtendienst des Bundes here in Switzerland, NDB. And then you ask them to please cease and desist. If necessary, you do it week in, week out. But the point is that you start addressing them. If they've got a contact, you will send it to them, write a brief letter and say, I'm pointing you to my YouTube video. It is now public and I ask you to stop. and you also send a letter to the other organization that is in charge of supervising the intelligence agencies. There is typically some sort of government oversight committee, even though it only exists nominally. There is usually some sort of government organization, and please check if they have got freedom of information. You continue doing that even if they don't have freedom of information, right? But if they do, or if there are several organizations, pick the one that has freedom of information, because then later we can also claw back the fact that you've written to them. I mean, not actually in detail that you by name, but in an anonymized statistic we can pull out, and then we can start asking why did they not do anything about it, and create personal culpability. And this is what it's about. It's about personal culpability. And these are crimes against humanity. They are war crimes. This is big. And they are premeditated war crimes. This is super big. And now we're moving towards personal culpability. Who is in charge? Where are the rotten apples, right? So, point number one in system judo, the more is happening to you, the more you report about and reflect back at them and say, how come that this is happening? And things like break-ins, people come into your home. I can make a video about the things that, from my experience and other victims' testimonies, I can confirm to the absolute best of my knowledge that this is normal, right? For being a victim of the intelligence agencies, this is normal. This is typical stuff that they do. So if your what you observe, experience is like that or similar, even if it's outlandish and doesn't fall into the category, if you've got some sort of overlap, you can show that yes, these are the intelligence agencies. They might have done something creative with you, but if you overlap just a bit, that's already enough. That is a clear indication that this is what you're suffering from, right? Okay, so point number one, system judo. Let me write it down. This is now, we're now getting to the nitty-gritty. And of course it does take some courage, right? It does take the courage to make a YouTube video, but if you go to my website, to stop007.org, if you go down, there's one section, so at the bottom, I essentially made three boxes. One of them is those who died for us. Those are essentially victims who have passed away, right? And either murdered or killed themselves. And I still have to fill out that section. I just didn't have time. But this is the idea. The middle section is essentially those with blood on their hands. Those are either the people who are personally responsible, either for doing this or for not stopping this, or the people who chose to do nothing, even though, like the press, even though they were informed. Everybody like that has blood on their hands, right? So that's the section. Those are the guilty section. But then next to it, there's a section called Rock the Boat. And there I'm listing videos which are, for me, personally, in my view, very important videos from victims and from key whistleblowers. You can find many videos there. The descriptions are still missing. Oh, forgive me a second. Just a second. So what this was is I just realized my laptop is running out of battery and I wanted to finish filming this. I just had to plug it in. So what you will find there is essentially the whistleblowers and victim testimonies as well. And you can see that by just literally turning on a webcam. It doesn't have to be high resolution. You don't have to have a fancy background or something like that. Turn on a webcam and just calmly, maybe in 5 or 10 minutes, just summarize what has happened to you. You can also make a 2-hour video where you just go through all the details. It doesn't matter. The important thing is just put it out there so that we know about you. That essentially, as soon as you put it there, it will be backed up by YouTube and many other places. So essentially the world will have a copy, will know that this happened to you, and you can see just what powerful videos people can create by just appearing. When you see a person's face and you can really listen to their words, you immediately know, is this now genuine or not? Is this like total nonsense or what? If you write something just on on a blog, people don't have as many indications. You know, they don't hear your tone of voice, they can't see your face expression, and it's very hard to say, is this for real or not, right? But if you just put it out, this is not me trying to like data farm. You only do this if you're comfortable with it. But as much as if I had written all the words that I've told you now over video, if I'd written them on a blog, I don't think you would have, you know, you would have taken it in the same way. And that's true of all victims. So my suggestion is, if you are comfortable, and I tell you it is extremely therapeutic just to talk about it, if you're comfortable, what I would recommend is that every week or every 2 days or whenever you feel like it, you just make a brief video and you just explain what has happened to you. And this will also entice you to keep a logbook. So I also keep a logbook of the abuse that I suffer here. And what I do is I bought one type of logbook, which is, it has this layout. So you have at the top, right, you can write, oops, can you see that? You can write the date. And then at the end of the day, I put a title summarizing, like, you know, crazy assaults to the head or hack attacks or whatever, so that when I flick through the book, I can actually see what happened that day very, very quickly. And if you just have 1 page per day or 5 pages per day, depending on how much you like to write, you get it down, and a logbook like that's already important evidence for the court, right? You can just scan it or make photocopies from it, so that's already the first step. But then if you do that, make a video about what happened to you and summarize it at the end. And then I would recommend you do the same thing I did, which is make a public video, ask personally by name the head of the intelligence services to cease and desist these activities against you, and you post a link to them. You leave the original source public, but you post a link to them. If it's a contact form like that, you can also post on Twitter or your website afterwards that you did post it and what you wrote to them. You can say, please, I ask you to cease and desist. Please see a more detailed account of my injuries in my video, or the account of the attacks in my video. Then you don't have to type it all out. But it is evidence, right? And then you can also do what I did, which is look up in your country how to make a statement under oath that is recognized by the courts, and make a statement under oath if you're comfortable with that. If you really want to have court standard, but then of course people can hold you to whatever you said. So only do that if you have documented in the logbook, it really is the truth, and you really want it, you know, you are happy to be held to whatever you said. So you can't change your story after that, right? So this is the thing. And if you do that, then bounce it straight to the head, because then the more things they do to you, the more horrific stuff is on public record that they did. So it starts getting back, you know, instead of just a small accusation, they are hit with like a massive thing. You know, like, these are all the things you've done to me, like public mutilation and on and on. You destroyed my business, you did all these things. And then the more people the system assaults here at the bottom, the more gets back to them, right? And it goes straight back to them. Sorry, I managed to drop it. So essentially, you just have this sort of effect. Can you see? It's like the more every person, or, you know, it's not, it looks like it's coming from the employees, but you know what I mean. You know, the more people are essentially assaulted from below, the more gets back here, straight to the head. And this is the sort of amplification effect we want. And that's exactly what I mean by system judo, because you use the inertia of the system here at the bottom to bounce it back, and essentially the more the system starts to mistreat people here, and the more people it attacks, the more people go back, and then this person will become the targeted individual. The head of intelligence will become the targeted individual, and that's what we want, because he has got the power to stop it, right? And the more hassle he gets, the higher the incentive for him to stop. So that's system judo step number 1. In the next video, I'll show you other methods to fight this war. Because yes, unfortunately it is a war. We'll use non-violent means, but just because it's non-violent and very, very subtle doesn't mean it's incredibly powerful. Because of system judo, we're using essentially the violence and the force and the out of controlness of that system against itself. Thank you for listening, and please watch the second part where I'll tell you some more tricks. Bye for now.